So today we're going to be taking a look at building out a logo in Adobe Illustrator. You see on the screen we have a Smoky's Bar and Grill. We're going to look to take this apart, looking at how to build out the icon and then add in the text and also add in some cool effects that can help make it stand out. To begin, I'm going to be scaling this down just so we have reference what we're going to be creating. And it may not necessarily be exactly similar, but modify it to the best of your ability. I'm going to go over to left side navigation in Adobe Illustrator, and I'm going to click on the pen tool. Pen tool will allow me to create some curves, build out the shape that I'm looking for the design. So we're going to start out with the overall flame. I can click on the open area. I'm going to click a point, click and drag to create the curve for the bottom part, move up the left side, and I can click and drag to start to create the bend for my shape. If you mess up, you can always hit Command Z or Control Z if you're on a PC. And I can click and drag to try creating out the curve, matching as best I can. Once I've gotten to the end point for the top area, I'm going to click back on this anchor point to end my curve. So then I can begin going down in the opposite direction. I click and drag. Make sure not to let go of the mouse until you're satisfied with the curve. Once I have my point, I can look to connect back to the beginning, or if I'm not satisfied with it, I can click on the anchor point to end the line and create my own next curve. But for this is relatively okay. I can click on the point, and to complete this out, we've enclosed the object, clicking back on the starting point. Now I can go into building out the next shape. We have that larger piece of the flame. I'm going to go over to the right side. Again, click a point, go up towards the middle area, click and drag to create that curve. Then moving up towards the top area, I'm going to click where the top anchor point should be. Then I can look to now build out the right side. Again, click and drag to create that curve. If I'm not satisfied with the location, again, I can hit Command Z at any time. Maybe I want to move this down a little bit further, make sure I get the whole shape. And now I'll look to connect back. As I can see right now, the curve is actually a little bit too strong for what I like. We can always make a modification to the curve. I can make it either prior to or after the fact. So if I want to do it prior to, I can click on the anchor point that we made. Then I can redraw out the curve to my satisfaction. Or I can undo, Control or Command Z. I can look to connect that curve, but then go in with the direct selection tool to modify the anchor point, modify the curve until I'm satisfied with the curve itself. As you can see, I'm grabbing the handles of this object. It will actually modify the right side and top of my curve as well. If I wanted to focus specifically on just this side of the angle, I can hold down Alt or Control, modifying just this side of the curve. So if I go back to it, it's close, but I can always make modifications. I can click on the direct selection tool. I'm going to look to tweak this curve out, move it in a different location. You can click on anchor points to modify until you are satisfied with the overall look and feel. You can see I want to make a little tweak to the original. I can click and drag this inward, and I can modify the curve if I'm not satisfied with it. But that's not bad overall. Now we can see that we have the circular area in which I want to crop off. and create out. I can go over to the left side navigation. I'm going to go over to my ellipse tool. And with the ellipse, I can look to click and drag. I'm going to start over the top side. And because I did not alter my color, I can see over in the left navigation, I'm dealing with a fill color. The fill color is a gradient currently. We can start out with the flat color. Or because this is blocking over top of my shape, I actually want to switch this over to my outline. This way I'm able to see where I'm placing this object and get into creating out the thickness that we have around this edge. So I'm going to look to now thicken up the weight and go over to my stroke panel. With my stroke panel, I can adjust the weight until satisfied. And I'll do my best to place it in about the correct area where I want. Now that I have this shape, we actually want to alter this stroke. The stroke is not necessarily going to be editable as we like. We want to turn it into a fill shape. So I'm going to go up to my top navigation, go down to up to object, and I'm going to click on expand. Clicking on expand, I'm going to make sure that the fill and stroke are selected and click OK. And as you can see, the stroke has now become an actual full shape. So if I zoom in, we can take a close look. When I select it, you can see the outside edges have now become the actual stroke area. So now taking a look at this, there's some areas that I would like to take out, leaving out the top area on the edge of my shape, cutting this area out, and down on the bottom in between the two flames. So what I can look to do is I'm going to select my larger flame, and I'm going to go up to Object at the top navigation, down to Path, and Offset Path. Offset Path will allow me to be able to create a thicker variation of the shape, which will give me the area in which we can cut out from our circular shape. So I'm going to click on Offset Path. Taking a look at the numbers, I have my preview selected so I can see that a thickness has been added to the outer edge. But I'm going to actually scale this up a little bit more. Try 0.8 inches. I can uncheck preview, recheck preview, make sure I'm satisfied with the number. And I'm going to take it up just a little bit more. Make it 0.1 inches. That's very close. Just to add an additional little area, just to make sure I have what I want. So now that I have my offset how I like it, I'm going to click OK. With this offset, I'm going to look to cut out part of my circle. With cutting out part of the circle, I want to look to use the Shape Builder tool. Shape Builder tool is one of my favorite tools in Adobe Illustrator. Over on the left side navigation, we're looking for the icon for the Shape Builder, or you can hit Shift M. But with the Shape Builder, it's two little circles with the dotted line and a white arrow going through. With this, I want to make sure that I select the original flame, the offset path that we created for that larger flame, as well as the circle. Using this, I can look to cut out some areas. And I also want to make sure that I select this smaller area flame as well, just so I can cut out the area in between the two shapes. So back over to the Shape Builder. If I want to cut out areas, I can hold down Alt or Option. I'm going to click and drag through the area to see the little gray boxes appear. It cuts out that gap in between. And now I want to cut out the gap on the top as well. I'm going to again hold down Alt, and you'll see a little minus sign appear. Click and drag through those areas, cuts that out, and then again down over on the right side of my object. There are a couple lines that we can see that are standing out around the flame. I can look to take these out. I can double click on the circle to go into isolation mode. With isolation mode, I can focus on the areas that I want to take out. So choosing the area that hides behind the flame. And for the areas that are revealed behind these two flames, either you can select it all again and use the shape builder to cut these two areas out. Or you can simply just move the circle behind those two flame shapes. So if I select on the circle, I can hit Command Shift left bracket, sending the objects to the back. As you can see that they're now not visible. If there's any tweaking that you need to do, you can always zoom in, take a closer look. You can see that there's a little tiny area on my object I want to pull in. I just want to move this anchor point. I can click on the direct selection tool, the white arrow, click and drag this out of the space to make sure it's not visible anymore. But now clicking off it, I can get a clean look overall of the design. Did a pretty good job matching what I had previously. Now we're going to look to add in a couple effects. First, I want to put the gradient that we have on the outer circle. I previously saved a gradient originally over on the gradient panel. If you would like to make a custom gradient, you can pull colors down onto the gradient bar. So if I wanted to modify the object that I have selected, I can click and drag swatches onto my gradient bar. You can see that I've added the red color. I wanted to add a completely different color just so we can see the difference. We see that it's now selected. Over on my left side navigation, you can see the gradient is quite complicated. You have a lighter color, then the red, then the green, and orange. But if I want to take out any colors on this gradient bar, I can click and drag color downward to eliminate that, and you see that my object has turned more so green. It may be even easier to change it over to a linear gradient. Linear gradient can travel from one direction to the next, whereas a radial gradient will radiate from the middle of the object. So I'm going to click on the linear gradient, and again, just as an example, you can see the green here. I'm going to pull off the orange for right now. And you're going to need to select the gradient tool in the left side navigation to click and drag onto those objects. You can see down at the bottom, I did leave a selection of this area. I want to take a closer look in. You can see that there's a couple pieces that have overlapped and joined in a separate way. But again, I want to go into isolation mode to make sure that I get this area selected out. I can delete this out as it is not helpful for me for my design. So taking a closer look, we can see how the design has created that gradient. I have the other gradients based off of an original design I did with a radial gradient. But with this outer circle, I have green to red. I can always modify the placement of these gradients to make it how I want. Or if you saved a gradient, you can always grab colors to save them for later. If I wanted to have this green-red gradient, obviously not something that we would normally use, but I can click and drag it into my swatches and always save it for later. But for this this circle, I'm going to go back over to the radial gradient, click on that gradient, and we can see it apply back into the object. It is using a radial gradient, but I may want to switch over to the linear just so I can get that lighter color really appearing on the design. If I want to modify the direction of the gradient, right now it's traveling from left to right, I'm going to click on the gradient tool, and this time I'm going to click and drag from top to bottom. And we can see that, like the flame around it, we can get the gradient traveling from light to dark. But now, as you saw before, we do have a couple additional marks inside of the shapes. This just helps to add a little bit of element, create a little bit more interest, so it's not a flat design. So if I wanted to create this type of design, I'm going to actually click over on my ellipse tool. With the ellipse tool, I'm going to draw out a larger circle or oval shape. Click and drag over this area. I'm going to expand it just a little bit further, just to match it to what we have. With these shapes, rather than deleting out areas, I'm actually going to duplicate them so I have multiple layers to work with. So I can hit Control C or Command C and hit Command F or Control F. This is paste to front. This takes the object that you just made a copy of and pastes it directly on top of. Now that I have these copies, I'm going to hold down Shift and select on the circle. I only want to keep the areas that these shapes overlap. To make sure I have it correct, I can use the Shape Builder tool. You can use the Pathfinder tool. It is up to you what you prefer. Over on the right side navigation, I'm looking for the Pathfinder. It has a number of different shape modes as well as Pathfinders. If I take a look at the top navigation, if you do not see the Pathfinder on the right side navigation, I go to Window. In alphabetical order, we can see a list of different tools that you are able to use. So alphabetically, just go to Pathfinder. I already have mine displayed, so you see the check mark. But because I have the circle on top, it would only really focus on one of these two objects. It's a little bit more complicated with Pathfinders because if I were to normally leave at the intersect, we can see the intersect on the icon. It's not going to leave both of those pieces. Because I have two pieces that are sitting behind, it's not going to give me what I want. Instead, I believe the Shape Builder is a little bit more adaptable, and we can use the Shape Builder. I can hold down Alt to get the minus sign, and I cut the areas of the shapes that I do not need. Just clicking on those areas, leaving the two pieces in the middle here. This gives me an area in which I can add this warmer glow happening on the shape. So with these two shapes, I click on, hold Shift, click on them both. I'm going to switch back over to the radial gradient, and I'm going to expand my radial gradient so it's going to look more cohesive overall. And drag it outward. And again, I can always make modifications. I can see that in the next area, I'm going to add actually a little bit darker area at the top. So I'm going to go back over to my gradient tool, click and drag out another circle. Click on the selection, hold down Shift, click on these two pieces. And again, with the Shape Builder, I'm going to hold down Alt, cut out the areas that I don't need. And if you didn't make a copy, you may prefer to make the copy again. Let's step back just so we have them. Selecting on the two original pieces, Command or Control C. So Mac versus a PC, and then Command F on a Mac. And again, with the selection tool, selecting out the oval shape. And with the Shape Builder, I'm going to cut out the areas that I don't need, holding down Alt. So you can see that these two new pieces are actually showing on top of the last two additions I made. So I can always hold down Command left bracket, tap that down to move it under the last shapes I made. Finally, I'm going to look to modify my gradient a little bit further. I want to get a little bit more red on the bottom of the shape. I click on the gradient tool. I'll get a deeper red on this side. But for the inside pieces, I'm going to look to select. I'm going to change the gradient to the opposite direction so we get the warmer color towards the bottom. And we get the darker color towards the top. You can see we're just trying to match to what I have the example of here. Then back over to the gradient tool, redrawing out this gradient as well, getting that warmer yellow. towards the bottom edge. And just tweak as you need to figure out which is going to be the best variation for you. Once I have what I'm looking for, see, pretty good variation, a little bit thicker in the middle, that's okay. But I created a flame that I'm happy with. Now we're going to look to modify the text as well. I'm going to start out over with the type tool, capital T on the left side navigation, click and drag to create out the text box. And for this, we'll just call it Smokies. With Smokies, we're currently working with a black font. Unfortunately, if you try adding in a gradient on the text, you're not going to be able to see it until we convert it into outlines. We'll discuss that shortly, but I'm going to also add the text box for the bar and grill. So I can make a copy of this text box or draw out another text box right below. I can put on my cap lock, or you can hold down Shift. To expand out my text box a little bit, I can use the selection tool, click and drag over to the side. So first I want to scale down my text. I can go over to the character panel on the right side navigation, reduce down my text. Again, it doesn't necessarily need to be exact, but we want to create a hierarchy of information. The main title of the restaurant that we're creating is Smokies. Bar and Grill is just more of a descriptor to help understand what Smokies is. But now that I have this text box sitting underneath, we can look to make sure that everything is in order. First, I want to make sure to group my original icon. Before, if I wanted to click and drag on a piece, I'm actually selecting individual pieces. If I click around, you notice that it's not selecting everything at once. So I want to group together. So I'm going to start from the open area, click and drag over it, and hit Command G or Control G on a PC. Now that I have that combined in one group, if I click on it, you see that it's selected with that. But it will make sure that these don't get out of order when we get into using our alignment tool. We're using our alignment tool to make sure that we have Smokies, the bar and grill, and the icon all in a straight exact line. So I'm going to start again from an open area, click and drag over, or you can always hold down Shift, click on the individual pieces so that they're all selected. Once I have them selected, we're going to go over to the right side navigation and we're going to go back over to our alignment tool. If you do not see a line over on the right side, you can go up to Window, and again, alphabetical order, we have the Align. But with our Align tool, we're going to make sure that this just stays in the correct order. I'm going to click over on the horizontal align center, and you see that it slightly adjusts everything just to make sure that it's centered. Now that we have this, we're going to look to take our text. Again, we cannot add a gradient over on the left side navigation. You see that it stays black even though we added in the gradient on the left side. What we have to do is hold down Shift, select both the bar and grill and Smokies, and we're going to go up to Type at the top navigation. Under Type, we're going to go down to Create Outlines. With creating outlines, it's going to turn the text into objects. So you won't be able to edit the text once we do this. So make sure that you have correct spellings, proper grammar, or any additional punctuations that you need. So I can click Create Outlines, and you see, again, it turns into an object. From here, now when I click on the gradient tool, it will actually apply that gradient onto the text. Looks good so far, but again, you can see that we added a little different element on top of Smokey's text at the top navigation. So I'm going to look to select the Smokies, and again, I'm going to make a copy of this. I'm going to hit Command C. Before I make a copy and paste it in, I'm going to now go over to the pen tool. And again, we want to make sure we made that copy first. So select on it, hit Command C. We can always put the copy in back later. If you want to do it right now, you can grab Smokies, just place it off to the side of our document or away from the original text. But with this text, I'm going to go over to the pen tool and I'm going to look to draw a curved line that kind of sways within the word Smokies. It can go any different direction. You can see up on the top one, it's going with a upper arc and then curving back up. This time I'll go with a lower arc just to show you the difference. I'm going to click and drag to create a curve and then get to the other side of the word Smokies, click a point, and I actually want to make sure that this is on a stroke. So over on the left side navigation, I'm going to switch my fill. If I want to end my line, I can hit escape on the top of my keyboard, left side. But again, I want to swap my fill and my stroke. You can see the little icon with the double arrows. This way it gives me a divide between the letters of Smokies. So like we did before, we want to create a separation from the top half of Smokies and the bottom half of Smokies. And using the shape builder, again, a great tool I find very adaptable for a lot of different situations. I think it's one of the best solutions and unique tools of Adobe Illustrator. But I'm going to select over the text of Smokies and that curved line that we've just drawn. And now with the shape builder over on the left side, I'm going to look to cut out the bottom half of the letters. So again, holding down Alt, I can change it from a positive icon to holding down Alt or Option. Click and drag through the areas that I don't want. And make sure to get the little gap in between the O as well. And all the areas that I've just clicked and dragged over, I can let go with the mouse, and you see that they get cut off. So it leaves us with just the top portion of Smokies. But remember, we did make a copy of that text, so when we go back to paste it soon, we'll see that it will line up correctly. First, we want to delete out this curved line. To select on the curved line, you can select on the outside edge, simply hit delete or backspace. Now we want to paste in the original Smokies that we made a copy of. You're going to hit Command F. That means paste to front. And it's currently showing in front of the text of Smokies that we just created. So if I want to send this to the back, again, Command Shift left bracket. And we can already see that there's a little separation between the colors. But we want to make it a little bit stronger. So I'm going to select on the top portion of Smokies. If I want to change the gradient, I can always try a radial gradient. And automatically, when you click on the radial gradient, it will apply on to individual letters. But we can go over to the left side navigation, click on the gradient tool, and you can see that they all start out with their individual gradients. If I want to draw out a custom gradient, I can do it for just one area. You can see that I can get the left side of Smokies to get a warmer, lighter yellow, and it gets darker as you go to the different areas. But for the bottom portion, I'm going to select that bottom part of the text. This time I'm going to invert or reverse my gradient. Click on the reverse, we'll switch the color, and again I'm going to switch it over to the radial gradient. With the radial gradient, this time I'm going to go over to the right side of Smokies, and I'm going to click and drag. And you can try different things to see how it's going to work. Certain areas of the letters I don't necessarily like, so I can always look to adjust. I can modify on the gradient itself. I can rotate the gradient, but we're dealing with a radial gradient, so we're not going to see much different. But I can always look to try different placements as well. So if I look to draw out my gradient towards where the warmer color was, we can see how lighter colors might appear in different areas. Not exactly what I'm looking for, so I may make some modifications. Maybe I make the bottom be the darker color on the outsides. So I can go over to my gradient panel. I'm going to look to reselect out my gradient that I originally had. With the gradient tool, I can click and drag. Again, it goes from lighter in the middle to darker on the outsides. I'm going to change it on the top portion. You can see that I've selected out that top section. I'm going to use the gradient tool. I'm going to flip this gradient. And you can see that I can get this more orange effect around certain areas. Again, you may be satisfied with it, you may not necessarily like it, but this is why we experiment. So for myself, I'm just going to go back over to the linear gradient, give me a softer yellow on the top portion and a darker yellow on the bottom, or that orange or red color on that bottom section. So the top portion starts out with that orangish yellow and then gets to that more dark red orange. And then I'm going to select the bottom portion, again switch it over to linear gradient. I can click and drag, see what it looks like with the dark areas. And I do like that effect where I'm getting that little strong red happening that separates the lighter orange and red. But I'm going to drag just a little bit different angle. If I want to make sure that I get a perfect angle, I can hold down Shift so that my line goes straight directly up. So now when I click off of it, you can see that the bottom section has a more bold red, whereas the top section is that lighter orange, the little bit of yellow coming from the top edge. So if I'm looking to place this object over into another file, if we want to go to Google Drive, place it into a presentation, I first want to save my work as an Illustrator or PDF. Illustrator file is very custom because we are using the program itself. I can hit Command C, or Command S, excuse me. Command S is to save, or I can go up to File, Save, and I'll rename this Smokies. Make sure you don't have any punctuations inside. You can save to my downloads or save to my desktop and hit save and hit OK. This is an Illustrator file. Unfortunately, an Illustrator file won't display if you're trying to bring it into a program like Google Slides or some presentation. So we need to make sure that we save it as another type of file. To make sure that I get this correct, I'm actually going to move the original Smokies logo off of my artboard. The artboard is the white area, the live area on our document. I want to focus on just the logo that I've created. If you want to modify your artboard, I can look to condense this white down to focus just on the logo that I've created. Over on the left side navigation, we have the artboard tool. This is with the advanced settings of Adobe Illustrator and the toolbar. If you want to modify your brushes, I can go always up to Window at the top navigation, go to Toolbar. Right now, I again have it on advanced. You can go basic, but it does limit on the tools that you have access to, but you still see that we do have the artboard. But again, with advanced, again, it just gives you more options, more tools that you may not be accustomed to. But when I click on the artboard tool, you'll notice that the little dotted line comes around the edge of my document. I can scale this in so I can focus on just my logo. With the logo, I'm going to look to pull the sides in, so I can focus on making sure my design fits in the area, leaving everything outside of the white area as a separate piece. So looking to now save this, I can go up to File at the top of navigation. We're going to look to export this as a PNG. Under File, I'm going to go down to Export, Export As. And I already have the name smokies.png we see listed. If you need to change the format, just click on the drop down. Again, alphabetical order, but I already currently had PNG selected. With PNG selected, I need to make sure that I click on my artboard. If you don't click on the artboard, the objects that are on the exterior are going to be visible. So we want to make sure that we have the use artboard selected. With this selected, I'm going to hit export and understand that we want to make sure that we have that transparent area that's going to display properly how we've created it, making sure that there's no distraction. But if I have this transparent area, it can work on different color backgrounds. Not only a white background, but possibly a black background, colored background. It is up to what your expectations are for the design. So we can see that we can do save it as black or save it as white, but transparent is what we want for this project. Next, we also have the resolution. If I click on the drop down for the resolution, they do offer 4 ppi, 18s, 36. Realistically, as a designer, you want to be working with the screen, medium, or high. Usually, screen is used for web. Medium can be intermediate based on what you're trying to create or how large you want it. And high is often used for print, but if you're looking for a higher quality image, you can always save to 300 ppi just to be safe. I'm just going to click on my standard medium and I click OK. Now that I've saved this work, I can go over to my Google document if I want to look to import it onto the document. And go to my sections. And I'm just going to create a tab for Google Slides. I can pull up one of my presentations. With my document, I can look to expand this just so we can see it. But I can go up to Insert at the top of navigation, Image, Upload to Computer, or from Computer, and I can see that it's located in my downloads. Make sure you know where you're saving it when you do. But in my downloads, I can see Smoky. I'm going to click on Open, and the logo places inside of my document. Remember, you can also modify your backgrounds. If you want to make sure that it works on different color backgrounds, I can right-click on the document, go to Change Background. Right now, it's currently saving as white. I can try black, see how it looks. If I click Done, it stands out, it's bold. There's a little bit of pixelation or edge that I'm not satisfied with, but I can always go to the higher resolution. But again, I can change my background to something I can be satisfied with. So change background again. Maybe I want to see what it looks like with a yellow. Not necessarily the prettiest looking thing with that much red and orange going on. But again, you can choose what works best for you. So I want to try something different. Red and blue to contrast irritates eyes a bit. So be careful not to choose a color that it's going to be a distraction. But ultimately, I can choose something that's a little bit more subtle, more gray tone, something that's I'm going to be satisfied with. So experiment until you're satisfied, but make sure you think about the color scheme as you build out a logo. The branding and identity of a company can mean the difference of success and failure for that company. So don't overlook logos. They have a strength to them. They give an identity to the company that you're trying to create. And is that representation, that visual image that people are going to recognize who you are. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you.